Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my thoughts with you on unlearning the names we give women. While growing up, there was a woman in my neighborhood, brilliant, outspoken, and unmarried. Her name was barely used. She was simply called that stubborn woman. I didn't know her story or her dreams, but that given name was enough to make me realize that a woman's name can be a verdict. Have you ever been called something that quietly shaped how you saw yourself? I hope this builds on your curiosity as to what's in a name to warrant so much attention. Names are not just words. They reflect far more. Names announce destiny, carry history, or even hold memories. But the angle from which we are viewing names right now is not with respect to names assigned at birth. The emphasis is on how women are named and addressed as adults. Why, you may ask? Because these given names reflect a rewriting of their faith in public language. Names can either constrain or elevate, affirm or diminish, and in many cases, determines the condition under which individuals are allowed to exist. For the purpose of this talk, I will be using given names and labels interchangeably, not because they mean the same thing exactly, but because they perform the same work. They reduce women's identities to socially approved or disapproved stereotypes, and they showcase the biases that are inherent in our societies. Adult naming is particularly powerful because it comes with judgment. In many African societies, the names we give women are not neutral descriptions, but powerful tools of social control that shape women's silence, suffering, and survival. And unlearning these names is essential to gender justice and harmonious coexistence. Having taken that, let's delve a bit further into what the significance of names are so that it will help us unbox these naming stereotypes that have been prevalent in our societies. Let me state at this juncture that naming functions as a powerful social mechanism through which identity, value, and legitimacy are constructed and regulated. Across literary traditions, for instance, names do not merely serve as descriptors, but instruments that shape how individuals are perceived and positioned within the hierarchies of power. In Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, for example, the use of a term such as agbala within the socio-cultural framework of the text encodes women's social status because femininity was mobilized to signify weakness and diminished social worth. Here, naming operates as a medium of evaluation, social ranking, and gender regulation. A similar investment in naming is evident in Arthur Fugger's Sizuibanzi is Dead, where names determine survival under oppressive systems. Across these examples, naming serves as a powerful social and psychological force. How? It shapes how we see ourselves, how others perceive us, and how society structures possibilities and limitations. Recognizing the significance of names, therefore, is not merely an academic exercise. It is a call to question, to challenge, and to unlearn the linguistic patterns that restrict humans, opening up spaces for more equitable ways of naming and being. As such, naming is neither passive nor innocent. It is a site of power through which identities are validated, be it through the gender regulation of female identity or the existential erosion of the oppressed. Names function as critical instruments in the production and maintenance of social stratification. We cannot unlearn women's given names if we don't understand the concept of unlearning. For us to grasp it fully, I want to place the very familiar with the not so familiar. So we're going to juxtapose learning and unlearning. Learning is not a single act. It is a process with connected stages. Be it formal or informal, it shapes how we see the world, and it leads to acquiring new knowledge, skills, attitudes, or behavior. Unlearning, on the other side, is a process of questioning, dismantling, or letting go of previously learned ideas, beliefs, or habits that are no longer useful, accurate, or ethical. Unlearning removes or revises existing frameworks, but it is not forgetting. It does not erase knowledge. Rather, it critically reassesses it and replaces it with better understanding. Let's take a quick analogy here. Learning is like putting new books on a shelf. Unlearning, on the flip side, is like removing, revising, and discarding the books you've relied on for so long because they are no longer tenable. As such, unlearning is harder than learning. Because while learning can be passive or active, unlearning is always an active engagement. While learning teaches us what to think, unlearning teaches us what to stop accepting. Learning builds knowledge, while unlearning rebuilds understanding. On the whole, unlearning requires critical, reflective, and strategies that involve self-awareness and demand sustained engagement over time. So it is a lifelong process. So we ask, what are these names that we are bothered about, that women are given, that has become the crux of our discussion? On this context, I would also want to juxtapose the names we give women against the names we give men under similar circumstances. Men are often named by what they achieve, while women are often named by how well they conform. Most African societies name men by their accomplishments, but name women by moral judgment. And this harmful naming traps women through control and traps men through performance. So we are all victims of giving names. Let's peruse through a few examples. A man without a job is unfortunate. A woman without a husband is a failure. A man who marries multiple wives is successful. A woman who refuses marriage is wayward. A man who is assertive is strong. A woman who is assertive is rude. A man who speaks forcefully is confident. A woman who does same is disrespectful. Men's sexual behavior is often normalized with words such as player or Casanova, while in contrast, the woman is called floozy. So, while a man is said to be experienced, the woman is termed promiscuous. So we have other names in marriage labels and other sectors of our day-to-day lives where women and men receive different names on account of the same action. As such, women are named mad at times for speaking the truth, evil for refusing abuse, useless for not producing sons, and ungrateful for wanting more than survival. On the broader scale, women are sometimes labeled as loose or stubborn, and these labels trigger sanctions. These labels confine women's voices and choices. So a woman labeled as wayward or disobedient risks facing family rejection and the justification of violence against her. This provides a scenario of same behavior, different names, and different repercussions. These names do not merely describe women, they discipline and sometimes destroy them. What's the impact of giving names on women? I asked you earlier, have you ever been called something that gradually shaped how you saw yourself? Some time back, I was driving to a neighboring state, and I got involved in a fatal road traffic accident where, sadly, a life was lost. The incident elicited so many reactions, but top of this were comments that questioned my ability as a woman. I was asked, what were you, a woman, doing behind the wheels on the highway? Yet others asked, why I thought women had the capacity to cover long distance journeys. Driving is a skill and can be learned by anyone, irrespective of their sex. Their ardent emphasis was not on how I needed to improve as a driver in order to avert future reoccurrence. Their emphasis is that they are giving assumptions that are hinged on the fact that as a woman, I shouldn't be driving on the highway. Overcoming this perspective has been an uphill task for me, to say the least. But I had to reassure myself that I have what it takes. I am not an incompetent female driver, with emphasis on the word female. While I give myself time to heal from the trauma, I now engage the services of male drivers who ironically may have had 1 or 2 records of road traffic accidents themselves. Women are affected by name tagging and labeling because of how power, history, and social significance are distributed. They are more specifically vulnerable to the effects of labeling because it makes them to second-guess themselves and sometimes withdraw from public spaces. We need to pay attention to the impact this has on women because labels shape reality, not just descriptions. Likewise, harmful labels sustain silence and injustice. And above all, because sometimes women silence themselves to avoid negative naming. As such, these names aim to tell women how visible they are allowed to be, how loud their voices should go, and how far their confidence may go. So why do we need to unlearn these given names? Unlearning given names help us to question the assumption that sustain inequality that is within them. It is deliberate. And what do we need to do? We must reinterrogate these words that ridicule, restrict, or reduce women's identity and make a conscious effort not to reproduce them. It is an act of intellectual and social responsibility, one that challenges us to move from passive acceptance to critical awareness. That way, names can affirm dignity rather than undermining it. Giving names also have the tendency to reduce women to one identity. It could be based on fertility, behavior, or moral status. But women are more. Women are thinkers, they are leaders, they are creators, and they are decision-making. Unlearning these given names require courage because some of these names are pronounced by our parents in religious and cultural circles and in social gatherings. Sadly, we are sometimes fluent in the language that wounds us. Every time we name a woman with dignity, we make room for her to breathe, to speak, and to live. This will create opening for agency and remove women from the linguistic prisons that we have placed them over time. And when we unlearn these given names, something powerful happens. A stubborn woman becomes a principled woman. A single woman becomes a whole woman. A childless woman becomes a woman, nothing more. And a bold woman becomes a truth teller. Thus, renaming rescues us from our excesses. So I urge you to listen to the names you use casually and the labels you repeat without thinking. So the question is no longer, what do we call women? The question is, what do our names make possible or impossible for them? Because when we use these labels, we are not just describing women, we are defining their boundaries. And boundaries, repeated often enough, begin to look like truth. But today calls us to something higher, to unbox minds. Let us embrace minds that refuse to accept what has always been said without questioning. Minds that refuse to accept language without examining it. Minds that recognize that some of the names we use and defend casually are actually limitations. We need to step outside such inherited language, to question the labels we normalize, and to confront the quiet ways in which we have participated in laming women into smaller lives. Because when we unbox our minds, we see more clearly the double standard embedded in naming and its lingering effect on us. By way of summing up, unlearning is not easy because it could mean unlearning parts of us, but it is necessary because somewhere A woman is accepting her worth based on her words. And yet, somewhere out there, a woman is shrinking to fit into a given name. And yet, women ought to exist without apologizing for labels they did not choose. For emphatic purposes, let me reiterate that unlearning these given names is imperative for the reason that they do not just describe women, they define their possibilities. Perhaps the real work is not in changing women, but in unlearning the names that have been changing them all along. Thank you for your rapt attention.